everybody. Kate Payne here from Standing Out Online, and thank you for joining me on Coffee with Kate. I have a very special guest today who is a native Australian, but in France, and he is a fellow LinkedIn expert. He's actually a LinkedIn ghostwriter. His name is Joe McKay. So, Joe, I'm so happy to have you with us.
Hello.
Cheers.
Thank you,
I'm
Kate.
sorry we
Cheers.
couldn't get you a real Coffee with Kate mug, but our vendor doesn't ship to Europe.
That's completely understandable. Look, I didn't have Colorado, but I've got New York, so we're
Okay, good. We're close enough. At least
almost
we're sort of in the States.
there.
So let me just, I'm going to share with people a little bit about you as we get started. So from earning $500 in his first batch of LinkedIn posts to building a six-figure business in under 2 years, Joe has mastered the art of creating content that resonates. As a LinkedIn ghostwriter, he's helped solopreneurs, founders, and CEOs generate over 2 million impressions and establish powerful personal brands without getting lost inside the big blue box of LinkedIn. I love that. So welcome, Joe. And we're going to dig right in. So thank you very much for making the time to be here. And I got up extra early for you since you're in France and I'm in Colorado.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Kate. Looking forward to today.
All right, so let's jump right in. You've helped clients generate over 2 million LinkedIn impressions, as I mentioned in the bio. What's the real secret behind content that connects instead of getting lost in the scroll?
Yeah, this is such a great question. And it's, as a LinkedIn ghostwriter, as someone who helps people create LinkedIn content, it's something I've wrestled with a lot. I put this down to what I now call campfire factor.
I love campfire factor. I love that.
Campfire factor, yeah. And so for me, campfire factor is not about number of views or likes or any of that kind of stuff. It's really about, can you, through content, create a moment that people want to kind of gather around, an idea, something that sparks a conversation. And I guess if you go looking for it, you'll kind of see it. And I typically look in the comments section of a LinkedIn post, and a LinkedIn post that's got campfire factor is really like sitting around a campfire, and there's different conversations, kind of sub ideas being shared. There are people sharing constructively. It's kind of a warm, inviting place to be. And for me, that's the key to really engaging content on LinkedIn is figuring out what's gonna get people to stop and hang around for a little while.
Right.
So that's really the secret, I guess. Unlocking that and creating that is a whole other story.
Well, I think that, for all these years to where we are now, as you know, and I'm sure you hear this all the time, that LinkedIn's always been the more staid platform. Like you've got to always be professional. You've got to only talk about business. And while yes, that is the main thing, but you can bring in personality, you can create engaging conversation. You don't have to just leave a tip. And what do you think? Do you do this? That's just the kind of older format. And I think a lot of people still get stuck on what to do on LinkedIn. I that's the thing I hear all the time. I don't know if you do as well. Like, I just don't know what to do.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And I think, there's a few aspects to this. I think for starters, none of us have ever worked, in a complete vacuum. Like, we are all people 24 hours a day. And so it's completely normal that you kind of have this, I guess, there's not always a clear distinction between our work and our personal life.
Right.
I think that's kind of exacerbated now with a lot more of us working from home or working remotely. For me personally, definitely the lines between my professional life and my personal life, quote unquote, are much more blurred. And so in order to resonate with other people and connect with other people, I think you need to kind of meet them where they're at. And a lot of us are in that state of
Right.
sort of this blended kind of continuum between work and life rather than very distinct personas.
Agreed. All right. We have a few people that are in here. So welcome. Please feel free to show yourselves if you want to, from the standpoint of asking a question in the chat. Any questions for Joe or for me as we go? We're going to have a really dynamic conversation, and we're going to be talking about some really cool things that you have not heard me talk about with relevance to LinkedIn. So the other thing about Joe is not only is he a ghostwriter at LinkedIn, and we'll get into that in more detail, but he's also an AI expert. And one of the things that I loved in his LinkedIn headline on his personal profile is he describes himself as an AI vegan. Tell us more.
Yeah, look, this is a recent adaptation, and this is really born out of my experience kind of looking down the rabbit hole of AI. And I guess when I use the term AI here, I'm talking really specifically about large language models. So ChatGPT,
About what?
large language models.
Oh,
So
okay.
ChatGPT being probably the best known large language model that we have. Claude and Gemini are some of the other kind of large language models that are out there that people might be familiar with. And so for me, in my LinkedIn content agency, I put a lot of thought and time and money into building kind of a small team of AI agents that were trained on content that I'd created for clients, and that could really, really effectively and really, really quickly generate more content on behalf of those clients.
Mm-hmm.
That initially to me felt like a really profitable, like really valuable way to grow a business.
Right.
What I found in practice as we went through this process and we started kind of outsourcing more of the work to, or I guess getting more support from AI in the creation process, was that we started to lose that campfire factor. We actually started to, the content started to sort of blur into one. It felt less distinct with kind of each iteration.
Right.
And I also just didn't sort of personally, ethically, environmentally, some different aspects of this, I just didn't necessarily know if I wanted to be, I guess, in charge of a business that was designed that way.
Right.
But I didn't really see a way out. Like, this felt very inevitable. Like, it feels like if you follow certain people, it feels like this avalanche is going to land on top of all of us, and that there's no way out. I did some more digging, some more thinking, and I've kind of realized that the stuff between my ears is, for me, is the most valuable part of my business. And I found that the more I was using large language models, the more I was embracing AI, the less heavy lifting was going on in here between the ears. And so I kind of figured, like, I need to kind of take back control of this. I need to take the shortcut, the simple way out, sort of off the table, and push myself to do the hard work, put in the reps that's required to keep myself sharp. And so that led to the AI veganism. So we basically disconnected large language models from all our content workflows, for myself, my own content, and for clients' content. And we are, I guess, doing it in the traditional way for now.
Okay.
Which has been a really interesting experiment so far.
Well, I love that. You know, I'm thinking you should make that a hashtag, because you could start, that could really become a thing, not just on LinkedIn either. The AI vegan thing.
Talking about it
what's that?
Talking about it on LinkedIn has certainly found its audience. Like, I think there are a lot of people who are, particularly in the creative professions, are wrestling with this idea of, what does AI mean for me every day? And I think for me, like, as a business owner, as well as someone who is paid to create, as I looked kind of a bit further down the line, I was like, well, how do I build a sustainable business with a value add, with a margin involved, that in a world that is kind of swamped by AI? And so if we're in a position where AI is available, what is kind of my role and my team's role beyond just turning the AI machine?
Right.
So this approach,
Sorry, go finish. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
This approach is really designed to almost preempt that. I guess what I see is potentially a race to the bottom of, like, okay, we can just do more, we can do it faster, we can do it cheaper. I'm trying to kind of be more the high-end kind of luxury brand versus the high volume brand.
Right. Gotcha. So one of the things I also loved in your about section of your LinkedIn profile is you said everyone wants to use AI to create content, but no one wants to read content created by AI. And I love that line. And I agree with you 100%. I'm probably about 2.5 years into adopting AI. And of course, it's something that's always evolving because it keeps changing. But, I was so against it. I was trained as a journalist and a writer. And I always thought, there's no way I will ever use AI. But I use it for ideas and inspiration. I never, ever, ever, ever use anything verbatim. I still want to, because AI doesn't have a soul, right? And I want my voice to come through. So how do you think creators, so people who are putting their own LinkedIn content out, how do you think creators should be using AI without ending up with what you call AI slop?
Yeah, so the AI slop, I think that's the kind of content that it kind of looks like content, but it sort of tastes like cardboard in a sense. If you
looks like content, tastes like cardboard. I love that.
Someone posted that on one of my recent posts as a comment. I thought that's exactly right. Like, it does. It has this appearance of content, and you finish reading it and you're like, what was that?
Right.
And again, this is where I just kind of had to pull the plug, because I really struggled to figure out where to draw the line. Like, demands of a growing business, trying to scale, trying to do more, deliver more. There always ends up being a deadline, a time crunch, and when you have this kind of outlet, this tool that feels like it can do everything for you, I really struggled to kind of make sure I was still really in control and at the helm, and not letting it take over the process.
So do you use AI at all in any aspect?
Not right now. So I use it, like, I have an AI note taker, for example, that joins
Yeah,
my
right.
call
Yeah, I
and
do too.
transcribes,
Yep.
but I'm not using large language models or ChatGPT, anything like that, in any of the kind of creative process.
Okay.
I'm trying to push myself through that.
I really respect that. I actually have, I'm doing a webinar tomorrow, and I talk about how people can be using AI tools to give them ideas and inspiration, not necessarily to create posts and then you copy and paste them and then you throw them online. And I'm adamant about that. But I do see that some people, it's a tool that people really do want to use. And I'm in that place, and I'm sure you've been there too, where it's like, I'm also wanting to teach my clients tools they can use, because, like, when you own a business, right? We own our own businesses. We use a calculator, you know what I mean, as a tool.
Yeah.
And so if you think of some of the aspects of AI as a tool, have it be just that, but don't let it be a crutch. Like, don't just,
Absolutely. Look, and I think that's a really important distinction to make. One thing that's been bubbling away for me really, and one of my great advantages, I guess, as a LinkedIn ghostwriter, when I'm creating for clients, the inspiration comes from the interview. Like, there's
exactly.
some raw material to work with. And so for an individual that's looking to create for themselves, it might be a voice note. You might just go for a stroll and just talk out into the void and record it.
I do that. I call that a brain dump or a stream of consciousness kind of thing. Yeah, right.
Absolutely. You might
and
even
record it.
record it, get it transcribed. You could even turn it into video eventually if you feel comfortable with that. Have a conversation with someone that, again, is recorded. Like, figure out a way you can get a thought partner in the loop. Now, a lot of people are using AI as a thought partner.
Yep.
I don't think that's the worst.
That's not my jam. I mean, for those who do it, great, but that's not,
Yeah.
I think where you and I had talked about in the green room before we got on the show is you and I are both all about bringing your actual voice forward and being authentic. And I know in this day and age now, the word authentic is kind of being overused, but it is the right word. And because of AI and because so many people are leaning on it, I mean, I can almost spot it a mile away now. There's just certain things, and that evolves too. But the more you are, the more your content is going to be noticed. It's going to be distinct, and it's going to stand out in that, sea of sameness, as they say.
Yeah. And I think, to get like a little bit technical for a while and help people understand this, I think there's a big misconception around this idea of the thinking that AI can do. Apple has published a report recently on this, but the term large language model basically just means your favorite AI tool has basically been fed every word that's ever been published on the internet. It's studied. That's the large language model.
Right.
And it can't think, but what it can do is give you a statistically most probable kind of sequence of words that line up in an order. So it's not thinking when it responds to you. It is just running a probabilistic equation and giving you a sequence of words that we then interpret as having meaning.
Right.
That's the risky bit, because it feels so like it makes complete sense when you read it most of the time, and it feels like it's thought, but it's actually not. And so that's a really important distinction to make, because when you feed it content to edit or to brainstorm, it is by definition going to bring your whatever you've written, it's going to bring it towards the mean. Like, it's trained on existing stuff. It doesn't have anything new that it can create. So you're by definition going to take some of the originality, some of the soul out of whatever you feed into it. And that's a dangerous process, I think.
I agree with you. We are totally on the same page. I might be using it maybe a little more than you do, but I use it especially for like my speaking things when I need flow. Like because it just helps me put the flow in place, and that's that's a helpful tool, you know?
Absolutely.
And so anyway, I'm always reading about it. I think your distinction though, Joe, when I'm always working with my clients or teaching in front of a group, I'm always the whole reason I named my business Standing Out Online was so that you, meaning the person with your profile or your platform, is bringing, is standing out because there's so much noise out there. And so I think your distinction, Joe, is exactly what you've just said about AI. And it's like you recognize it, you can respect it for certain aspects, and yet that voice piece, the story piece, the ghostwriting skill set that you have to help other people to bring their voice out is a gem. It's just really great. So
Yeah.
good
Thank
on
you.
you for that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So you also describe yourself, as we've said a couple times, as a LinkedIn ghostwriter. So first, not quite yet. First, I'd like you to just kind of describe what that is, because whenever I've heard the term ghostwriting in all my 35 years of being in career, ghostwriting always meant like you were publishing a book and you might hire a ghostwriter to write your memoir or to write the book. And so how did that come about? And what does ghostwriting look like in the content space? And maybe it's not just specific to LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. So what it looks like really, and I've actually gone back and forth a little bit on this. I saw something a while ago that said it's ghost writing, not ghost thinking. And I think the intent behind that was that more like a memoir or something like that. Your goal is to just capture sort of, ask good questions and extract out of the
Right.
subject kind of everything that they know. In the content space, I actually think ghostwriting to an extent is a little bit of ghost thinking. Like I am a content strategist. I've spent way too much time inside the big blue box of LinkedIn. Like I know what works. I know how to kind of unlock that campfire factor. And so we are trying to capture those real stories, those real anecdotes, and the client's kind of real language
Mm-hmm.
and their insight. But a big part of our job and the value that we add is kind of tweaking that, finding the angle, finding the hook, and amplifying it in a way that's going to work in the medium that it's designed to be published in. And so for me, I specialize in LinkedIn. This is absolutely a thing that covers all socials. There are Twitter ghostwriters or ex ghostwriters, people who create content on behalf of Insta and TikTok influencers as well. So, but it's kind of content strategy. It is ghostwriting in the sense of like interviewing a subject and helping them share their best stories and insights, making them feel comfortable. And then it's kind of also like editor in chief and kind of getting the stories ready and kind of optimized for the platform that they're going to be distributed on.
Well, when I went through journalism school, I went through news writing classes, feature writing. We had all kinds of different ways that we learned how to write. And of course, there's sort of a formula back then. There was more of a formula for writing a news story, for example, like there was AP, Associated Press style, or the Chicago Manual of Style. Like there were all certain ways you had to do it if it was going to be in a newspaper or magazine way before, in the internet. But one of the things we had to learn, and I'm sure you've heard this, is you had to write a good lead. Yeah. And so like, that's kind of what I tie in when I work with my clients on their profile. Like if you go to my profile, my first sentence of my about is I was an avid news junkie in 7th grade. I don't say I'm Kate Payne, the founder and CEO of Standing on the Line, and I've been in the da-da-da-da-da-da. Like that all comes out naturally just if you look at my experience section. I don't need to say all that in a bio. I want people to connect with me. And that sounds like exactly like what you're doing. So what inspired you? Well, let's do this. Why don't we just gotta like draw a line in the sand here a little bit and describe what you do in your business? Like, who do you work with? Yeah. What do you do? What does it look like to work with you as a ghostwriter for someone's LinkedIn content?
Yeah, for sure. So look, I will typically work with founders or solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, people who are running their own business. And those people are typically strong in maybe presentation skills. They're charismatic leaders. They are good with the spoken word. They might be excellent podcast hosts or guests, or they might be kind of masters of video content. But when it comes to the written word, for whatever reason, it's not their kind of preferred mode of communication. And they typically suffer from something that I call FOPO, this fear of posting online.
Instead of FOMO.
Yeah.
Oh, oh my
Yeah.
God, you've got all these great little gems. I love it.
We talk about leads. I mean, that is definitely a little bit of the job, is like kind of figuring out these little bite-sized bits that that stick, that are memorable, that are hooky, and keep people reading. So that's part of the job as well. I think the really interesting thing about LinkedIn, and what makes it so powerful, is that it is your professional network. You know, that's what it's
Exactly.
grounded in. That brings with it this FOPO, like most of us will have, especially if we're starting out or we're thinking about starting out. We will have, it might be an old boss, it might be a former colleague, it might be that person you went to high school with, and you're scared of what they're going to think if you start showing up
Yep.
and telling your story.
Right.
It can feel like a very personal, sort of specific thing, because it's tied to your professional brand.
Hmm.
And so a lot of people that I work with face that, and we help them kind of push through that. We help them realize the value and the interest in their insights. And that, your experience is obvious to you, but it's valuable to the people around you.
Right.
So really concretely, what that looks like is we would talk, an interview very similar to this, 60 to 90 minutes every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. And I basically use that to create 3 to 5 pieces of LinkedIn content that you publish, that the client publishes on their LinkedIn channel.
Okay.
We're doing more and more video content. So videos
Mhm.
obviously arrived on LinkedIn in
Short
a big
form
way.
video is doing really, really well on LinkedIn. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So look, that's been a recent addition to the offer. So we record all our, we get the client set up so they're looking great on camera,
Yep.
and then we hit record. And what I find is, just in the process of having a good conversation, the guard starts to lower, and they kind of start to feel more comfortable. And that's when the really interesting content comes out, and we turn that into video and
Great.
push it out as well. It's a really, really fun job. Like, I've just always had
I know.
so many
I love what I do.
it's fun. I mean, I just get to talk to interesting people and hear their stories, and kind of help get them out in the
Well,
world.
that's why I started actually my Coffee with Kate show. So I actually had this idea long before LinkedIn ever had LinkedIn Live. And I knew it was probably going to come at some point. So I started this iteration of my business. This is my third business, Standing Out Online, in 2014. And then when I saw that we could upload native video, which is uploading a video file to a post, you can't, and this is still true today, you can't have a native file, I'm saying this for our listeners, not for you, that's more than 10 minutes long. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to create like a little show. I'm going to call it Coffee with Kate. I had it branded. And then I'm going to do an 8-minute show. I think I used StreamYard because it had just come out, which is what we're on right now. And I would do an interview. We just did regular mugs. And then I was like, oh, we need to have a branded mug, and sent it off to the guest, because then it becomes like a little bit of a shtick, but it's not cheesy. It's just kind of, it's the way I'm kind of making it stand out. Plus it's a nice little thing for the guests too. But anyway, I did these 8-minute little native videos, and I thought someday when LinkedIn live, live LinkedIn comes out, and it was very different, because LinkedIn Live isn't like Facebook Live, as you know. You've got to subscribe to a third-party streaming service that's approved, partnered with LinkedIn. So anyway, but it was all about the conversation. I have never done my show just me, ever. I always want to spotlight other people. I want to have a conversation. I think people, at least this is me, when I listen to podcasts or YouTube shows or whatever, I like the interaction between two people. It's just more engaging to me.
Absolutely. No, I think you're totally right. And I have to kind of maybe break the fourth wall a little bit, because I know you just recently posted about you've just welcomed your first grandbaby. Like,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear what's been going with you and with life as a grandma.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes, my first grandbaby, I had a granddaughter, was born a week ago today. She was late. So my family's back in Vermont, and I live in Colorado. So I went back to Vermont like end of May, thinking if it came early, I wanted to be there. Anyway, she didn't. She took her time. She's stubborn like her father, my son. And she arrived last Tuesday. Everybody's healthy and good. So they came home from the hospital on Thursday, and Friday I had to leave. So it was a little tough. Had my first FaceTime call with her this morning, and she opened her eyes.
So beautiful. Oh, congratulations.
But thank you for bringing that up and indulging me for a moment. I didn't know you were going to do that. But I posted about it on LinkedIn just before the show, because again, you can you don't have to be all business all the time. If you bring in these little things from other aspects of your life where people can make a connection with you, building a connection is building a relationship, right? Relationships take time, and building relationships creates trust. And when people trust you, they, want to have a conversation with you, and maybe they hire you, for whatever it is that you do. So it's kind of like an old fashioned way. It's not just throwing in, cold emails into DMs and posting 2 times a day, every day on LinkedIn or any other channel. It's all about strategy. So let me ask you this, Joe. When you work with your clients about their content and their posting, I'm just curious, what do you suggest to them as far as a frequency and a cadence with their marketing on LinkedIn or their posting?
Yeah, look, I think like anything social media, more can be more. If you post more, you will on average reach more people, and that's fair enough. But where I see, I guess, like the 80-20 principle, that sort of,
Yeah.
we're going to get most bang for your buck, I think is 3 to 4 posts a week.
Yeah. I usually tell people 3. I mean, if one of the things I've learned, and I don't know if you've ever heard this from a fellow LinkedIn expert who does a lot of research every year on the algorithm, like in depth. I don't know if you follow Richard Vanderblom.
He's the man. Yeah.
He is the man. But one of the things that he talked about, and I think it came out in his most recent report, is that don't post every day. Number one, it's almost too much. But if you post like twice a day, you're actually competing with your own content. If you are initiating an initial unique piece of content, if you post at 9 a.m. on Monday, and then at 3 p.m. on Monday, you post something else, you could actually cancel both of your posts out because you're competing with yourself from an algorithm standpoint. Is that what you have learned too? I mean, I talk about that.
Look, I haven't ever had the willpower to post that frequently. I've definitely heard that. I keep an eye on what Richard is doing, and it's definitely in line with what I understand to be true.
Yeah.
I don't have hard data or experience on it, but I think for me, my biggest principle is this is like a diet or like a gym or like anything. The best kind of routine is the one that you can stick to.
Exactly.
And so if you've never posted on LinkedIn before, I think post once a week if you can. Post once and then see how that goes. Yeah.
Yep. That's what I teach my clients. I'm like, listen, because a lot of people are like afraid. And I'm like, listen, start out with once a week, but be consistent on once a week and see what happens over like 6 weeks. And if you start to see more engagement, you see conversation, you see people sharing, you see people talking, then be like, that should energize you to be like, maybe I'll do it 2 times a week.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's like you said, it's like the gym. If you tell somebody to do something all the time, they're gonna start, and then they're not gonna stay with it. So, all right, I want to get back into some of our other questions because I'm so excited to have you on my show. So your first paid gig was $500, as you said when we read your bio. Now you've built a 6-figure business. Was there a defining moment where it clicked and you knew this path would work? Was there like a aha moment?
Yes, there definitely was. But having said that, it was really a gradual burn to get to that point. So yeah, I wrote 10 posts for a former boss of mine who runs a management consulting firm. That was those $500. That gave me the inspiration for the idea that I could kind of do more of this.
Yep.
But I spent 12 months with this as a side hustle. I had a day job in marketing for a B2B SaaS company. And I spent my evenings and weekends kind of honing my craft and finding new clients. And for me, the side hustle is a real position of strength because my evenings, my weekends had a high value to me as a dad, as a husband. And so having a salary that paid the bills and kind of funded our life meant that with my side hustle, with my LinkedIn ghostwriting, I could kind of set a premium price point and I could just stay firm at that. Like I wasn't trying to just secure more clients to pay the bills and make this grow really fast. It was very much about figuring the part of the market that would pay that kind of premium price point. And so I stuck to my guns on that. And then there was a moment when I think it was like 75 to 80% of my salary I was making through the side hustle.
Wow.
After about 12 months of
Good for you.
And building it. Yeah, thank you. And that was very much my boss sat me down in the day job and offered me a big promotion. and that became the tipping point.
Okay.
That really became the decision point of like, no, I think I've proven out this side hustle idea. I think I can make a real go of this.
Yep.
It's taking me closer to the life that I want to design for me and my family. So it's now or never, I guess.
Well, I always love to hear the origin story,
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for asking.
so how do you, when you work with your clients, how do you help them stick to their own voice? Because if you're writing their content, you also have to learn their voice, but especially when the algorithm keeps rewarding, trends, templates, so to speak, not a literal template, but just everything's kind of the same. How do you kind of do that work with your clients?
Look, I think a lot of this work happens before we start working together, and that is about me and my positioning and kind of what I stand for in my personal brand. And it is Campfire Factor. Like, we are not trying to chase trends for you. We are not trying to make you go viral. I wrote over 1,000 LinkedIn posts for myself and clients, and I went viral once after I think probably about 1,100 posts in. So my job in my personal brand and kind of living what I like, living my values, is if you follow me and if you want to work with me, it's because I've kind of hopefully already educated you on the idea that we are here to try and talk only to the right people in your network. We're not trying to talk to everyone, and we're not trying to chase vanity metrics. So a big part of it is that education piece of like, we are going to stick to you and your voice. We're going to tell the stories and the insights that you know. We're not chasing trends unless a trend overlaps with your area of expertise.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's good to be on point on something because it's valuable. It's adding value.
Yeah. And then wherever I can, I try and use verbatim quotes from the customer interviews. I'm trying to inject that language as much as I can. I'm trying to build, things like FOPO, like Campfire content. I'm trying to build some of these little hooks for clients that they can use that become some of their messaging that shows up consistently. But it's very much a process, and this wavers with every client. If when results start to dip and the algorithm can feel very fickle, and you're like, no one's reading, no one's watching, we just have to stick to what we kind of know works and what their lane of genius is, and eventually the results come.
I think you're underscoring a really good point. Is sometimes when I think, like when I talk about what I do and what you do, and there's not an overlap, but we have we're on the same page in the best sense. We want the best for our clients. We want their voice to come out so that people build connection with them and hopefully eventually want to work with them. You can't do that like fast. You can't like rush it. It really is, as you said, a process. And I think sometimes when we talk about what we do to some people, they're like, okay, that sounds great, but I want to get moving right now. And so then they go into what I call the more formulaic ways of doing things, but then they don't get any traction because then they. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I've got you now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Did you hear what I said, or should I repeat that?
You got into the formulaic way of doing things, and
right?
then they don't
Right. But then they sound like everybody else. So then it's like they've lost time. Actually, now they see that they sound like everybody else, and then they come back. And so, how do you? I don't want to say how do you sell to your people. That's not really my question. But how do you sort of convince them, if you will, that this is an approach? Like, I think when I talk to those people who get it, like they're like, oh, it's exactly what I've been trying to do. And there's other people going, not so sure.
Yeah, look, I try and show up that way in my own content. Like I am trying to demonstrate the power of having a unique, authentic voice in what I publish. And so my hope is, like, I grow my business on LinkedIn. I have a small email newsletter as well. I don't have a website. I don't do any paid advertising, things like that. Like, LinkedIn is my place to be. And so my content really is the proof point of I guess my process and my approach. And so with that in mind, like, that really attracts the right people.
You model what you want other people to do.
Yeah, exactly. And look, not every, like, I'm not going to pretend that every client is the perfect client and everyone gets great results. Like, some people, we work together for 3 months and the traction doesn't come in the time frame that they wanted, and it's an honest conversation about how willing they are to kind of stick with the process.
Right.
I think what I've also discovered is that every person's audience is different, every person's network is different, and what works for a financial advisor in space A with network A might not work for that financial advisor in space B with network B.
Right.
And so yeah, there are projects that go better than others, clients that kind of work better than others, and we just try and stay in really close conversation and kind of be very, very real and open and honest with each other, and kind of give it as good a go as we can.
Good. I
along
love
the
it.
way. Yeah.
So we talked also before we went live about freelancer, solopreneur, founders, entrepreneurs. So what's the content mindset that shift that's helped you and your clients to look at that language a little bit differently? Because it really does become a mindset.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Look, I think if I'm writing for a solopreneur, the really important point for a solopreneur is their personal brand is the company brand. If you are the company, then it's extra important to really show up as yourself and lean into your experiences and history and all that kind of thing. I think when let's say you're a founder or an entrepreneur or a CEO, then it becomes a little bit more about what is the expertise that exists within the four walls of your business, whether that's real four walls or virtual four walls, in your team
Right.
and your expertise. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a more formal, like more professional, quote unquote, tone, but it is a little bit more. And I'm leaning into this identity now. I worked as a solopreneur,
Yeah.
doing everything for 2 and a bit years, and I'm now, I guess, what I would describe a nano agency. Have an account manager who helps me part-time and an executive assistant as well. And I'm looking to scale that. Like, I'm embracing this mindset of I'm the founder of a LinkedIn content agency. So that means, slightly different approach to language.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I think is a big missed opportunity for solopreneurs and individuals is using this we. Like, I see a lot of people trying to sort of pretend they're bigger than what they are.
Yeah.
And we do this and we believe this. And I actually think that's, again, a strong point. That's going to be a differentiator that you need to lean into. If that's the case, like, just be real with that, I guess, is what
I agree. I was in a high level coaching program for over a year last year, and we talked a lot about this, and I always kind of thought solopreneur was like a cool term, because I think there's a lot of people, especially people who have worked in like more traditional careers or corporate or whatever. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but it's the 9-to-5 job, so to speak. Right. And when you start your own business, it's a whole different thing. But when you're starting a business and it's like for me, even though my business name is Standing Out Online, my personal brand is Kate Payne. And I used to just say I was a business owner, which I was. But then it was like, develop the mindset of CEO. I don't need to be, it's not that I can't use the term CEO and try to come off as Standing Out Online as being a big corporation. That's not what I'm doing at all. But I have built a team. I have 6 people on my team, and I am the CEO. And when I thought about it that way, it was empowering. And I felt like I didn't have to know everything, and it wasn't up to me. I could ask the questions of others who are really good at the pieces they do. And so that's where that CEO mindset thing kind of comes in. And it just feels more accurate, and it's more empowering. I don't know if you've sort of.
I agree. I think
a little bit.
the identity bit is really, really important. And I fought the identity of agency founder for a long time. Like, I brought in a part-time resource, an account manager to help me deliver for clients probably about 9 months ago. But still referred to myself as a solopreneur. And I kind of knew that wasn't really 100% accurate.
Right.
But I didn't want to be an agency founder, because I spent a good 3-4 years in agencies and was on that hamster wheel for a while. And I just, it was something I didn't want for myself. But having more recently come to terms with the fact that, this is an agency and I'm running a small but, mighty team.
Yes.
It feels much more comfortable, and it's obviously accurate. It's true. And it's something I can lean into and use to scale, I guess.
Right. Exactly. That's the whole point is scaling. Right.
All
right. So now, so first of all, Joe, I just want to thank you for sharing your philosophy, your approach. I would love us to have an offline conversation sometime, because I think there might be room for, collaboration or something like that, if you're open to it. So let's make sure we have a follow-on conversation. For those of you who may be watching on the replay, if you have any questions for Joe or me, please tag us in the chat. And even if it's 2 days from now or 2 weeks from now, and we'll be happy to answer some questions. So now I want us to just have a little bit of fun, not fluff, but fun. So what is one of your biggest content pet peeves? So the thing that instantly makes you scroll past, and bonus points if it involves a robot.
Yeah, it's the AI slop, and the biggest giveaway that I see is when we get something out of ChatGPT, the first letter of every word in the sentence is capitalized.
Yes.
So you'll start to see posts that like the hook that first sentence, every letter is capitalized, and I'm gone at that point.
Yep.
Like I just
Yep.
know exactly where it's come from.
Yep.
So that is my biggest pet peeve when it comes to content.
Same here. And you know what else is now? I don't know if you remember, probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, whenever you got feedback from like ChatGPT, they'd talk about being the beacon or the tapestry of life. And I'm like, I would never talk like that. I would never refer to myself as a beacon for anything. And so that was a telltale sign. And it's interesting. Now it's the M dash. And I have used the M dash or the ellipses, the 3 dots, in my writing for years, but I was using them grammatically correctly. And now it's like, if I do get some kind of a result from ChatGPT on something I'm doing, I'm like, stop with the M dash. It's like so overused, but then you can tell when people are using it. Like, it's funny how, these things kind of show up. All right. So FOPO, I love, and I'm doing a webinar tomorrow. And do you mind if I use it and I will credit you?
Feel free to
I love
share
that.
the
Fear of posting online. I think that is brilliant.
Thank you.
All right. Here's a question for you. So if LinkedIn disappeared tomorrow, what's one unexpected place we'd find you building your personal brand?
Well, look, I live in a village in the southwest of France of about 5,000 people, and I'm the only Australian. So I feel like when I show up at the local playground with, I don't know, I like to wear Crocs. I'm a dad. I wear Crocs with socks sometimes, and I feel like that's kind of, and I'm just like the Australian. I speak my French with an Australian accent, and I feel as though in the real world that is my personal brand.
There you go. I love it. All right. What's one thing people would never guess about you based on your LinkedIn profile?
I hate social media.
I'm getting to that point too a little bit.
Funny. I think LinkedIn is like the One Ring in Lord of the Rings. Super powerful tool. Like I've built my business. I've designed the life that we love using LinkedIn as a tool.
Yep.
But if you use it too much, if you spend too much time inside, like you will turn into Gollum. It's just not it's not a place to spend unnecessary time, I think.
I agree. Live life, right?
Yeah. So I guess the social media creator who hates social media, that's
okay. Love it. All right. And then finally, so you're not going to expect this one. You get to rebrand LinkedIn with a new name. What are you calling it?
Wow. So I don't think I've actually verbalized the name of my LinkedIn content agency, but it's called Great Chat. And
Great Chat? I love that.
Yeah. So I think
that's a very Australian term, isn't it? Like,
I think so,
like Great Chat, like when you kind of walk, Great Chat, nice to see you.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if I'm right on that, but I feel like
look, that's kind of where it came from. And I think that's ultimately what we're trying to do for clients is help them have great chats with the people that might want to work with them. So look, if LinkedIn was, if Bill Gates called me and said they needed a new name, I'd be happy to donate. Great Chat. What about you? What would you say?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that. I wonder if Joe's going to ask me that. I'm not sure. I've thought about this often because, one of the challenges, I don't know what the name would be, but one of the challenges I've always had is that, my background is in marketing. It's in storytelling. And I don't mean like made up stories. It's about visibility. I have a long, lengthy career in public relations. And so I incorporate all of those things in my own business with standing out online. It's not just LinkedIn. Because one of the things I always felt like is if I called myself a quote LinkedIn expert, I didn't mean that to sound braggy. It's just that it's my platform of choice and I know it really well. Do I know everything? No, but I'm always learning. That I always just felt like I don't want to build my brand on someone else's tool. Do you know what I mean? So I've always been very conscious of that. Like, so it's not just the LinkedIn tool that I'm an expert at. It's how you show up on that platform. And it's about your voice and it's about your visibility and how you want to be. And I think to me, that is much more foundational. And LinkedIn just happens to be the platform because there's not all the vitriol like you have on the other channels. So
yeah, I agree. I think that's a really fair assessment. It's absolutely.
But I love great chat.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, launch.
And you know what? If I think of something, I'll let you know. I won't let you know if I think about it at 3 o'clock in the morning or driving in the car. Think about it.
You might, if you're spending time with your granddaughter and you're doing some bottle feeds and things, you might be up at some strange hours.
There you go. So anyway, all right, everybody. So Joe, thank you very much for having coffee with me. I didn't see you sip once, so you might be cold by now.
I've had a cup of water in here. Thank you.
Just as we wind down here, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you? Because I know you don't have a website. So on LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn, exactly. LinkedIn is the place to be. I spend way too much time on there. That is where you can definitely catch me and keep up to date with my content.
And please send him a personal note saying that you heard him on my Coffee with Kate show. And as a rule of thumb, most of the time you should always send a personal note because it's just good manners.
Completely agree. Great bit of advice there.
All right. And I think we also have your email too. Is that okay?
Yeah, feel free to send me an email. That's definitely another place that I spend way too much time.
Okay. All right. Well, Joe, please we're going to say goodbye, but please hang in there for a minute after we stop being live. And thank you again so much for spending some time with us today and sharing all your brilliance about LinkedIn and how to show up there.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me, Kate.
Thank you.